We got a fun call up for you today. We're talking about the top performers at each level on the season. Aram Layton, Elijah Evans. It's impossible to properly, I think, highlight every single one of the top performers because there's so many players that have performed so well. You also have the nuance of guys playing, some of their games at one level and then some at the other, which we're going to talk about as well, and kind of the criteria around that. But a really fun list that you put together here, Elijah.
Yeah, I'm excited. It definitely was a bit tricky to think through the criteria for what it means to talk about the top performers. We're doing single A and high A today. Just a little background for people. What I did, and this was pretty arbitrary, just kind of looking through stats, the qualification to be in the single A or high A standout, because we're going to talk about a lot of guys that got promoted, ended in, double A, triple A next week. For this kind of single A, high A, lower level focus, hitters had to play at least 70 games at the respective level, and pitchers had to have at least 15 outings at their level. That was kind of my way to say, these guys spent truly the majority of their season in single A and high A, depending on who the player was. So we've got like 10 players in single A, 10 players in high A. Obviously, there could be so many more. So if we forget your favorite prospect, forgive us. Where we're getting to as many names as we can. And, I promise throughout the offseason, we're going to be covering every team's farm system essentially because we're going to have a ton of time to talk about prospects. So if we don't get to someone today, we will get to them. And if you hear a name, if you don't hear a name that you expected to hear, it's probably also because they didn't quite meet that criteria because they already got too many games in double A or triple A potentially.
Exactly. And before we jump into it, I do want to talk about one guy performing at the highest level as he made his MLB debut. Didn't get a chance to talk about Trey Yesavage and his big league debut on here just yet. Teased it in the other episode, talked about it on the Just Baseball show a little bit and broke it down. But I was hoping that people that have been listening to us talk about Yesavage here for a little while saw exactly what we were talking about in that first start, where you have the highest release in Major League Baseball and creating this tunnel straight downwards where now from that high release, you're getting good carry. And then the way that the splitter plays off that, it's like he's dropping it out of the sky. And he was setting it up so well with his fastball. So against the Rays, he goes 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 9 Ks. And he wasn't necessarily dotting out of the gate. And then he just hit his stride and started setting everything up. 69 pitches, 49 strikes. I felt like that was a perfect example of how that vertical tunnel is just such a nightmare for hitters from both sides of the plate, and how when you establish that heater, how the splitter and that gyro slider works so well off of it. On top of that, you have an arm angle here that really hitters aren't seeing at all. And then with him basically dropping that splitter out of the sky, I think it has a chance to be one of the most dominant pitches, from a starter in Major League Baseball if he can continue to execute it that way. So I thought it was as advertised in that debut, and it really was cool to see it with a major league camera now, and you could really appreciate it with the angle there of how difficult it is for hitters through that vertical tunnel. And he may be a huge asset here for the Blue Jays down the stretch, and he definitely will be next year.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't get to watch the game live as I finished up my travels here, but I went back and I watched the highlights and dude, that splitter is ridiculous. I mean, everything was impressive overall, but like seeing that splitter just like multiple times within the sequencing of his MLB pitching in his debut, that pitch is ridiculous, man. What do you think is the best usage here of Savage? Because Toronto, like to their credit, like they're a team that I don't think a lot of people are necessarily as high as they should be maybe coming into the playoffs. And like they're going to be the top seed in the American League probably. And Savage is going to be part of it one way or another. What do you think is the best way for them to deploy him?
It's funny because I think he could just go out there and start for you, right? But they've been a little bit careful, I think, with his workload. So I wonder if like at a piggyback role where maybe they were going to go bullpen game or something like that, or if they just like the matchups, you have a lefty start the game up, and then if it's a couple lefties at the top of the lineup, and then have you Savage piggyback in the second inning and go 4 or 5. I think that could make a lot of sense because if you look at most of the starts this year over the last, just in general, but then over the last couple months, it's mostly been 4 to 5 innings. And then of the last month and change, it's mostly been 3 or 4 innings. I mean, that 5 inning outing this last time out was one of the first times he's done that, I think, since early August. So it definitely is something that I think they're going to be a little bit careful with. But I love him even in like a multi-inning relief piggyback role. Or if they want to try to five and dive him. I mean, he got through 5 innings and 69 pitches. If they want to keep him around that range, he's still got a good shot to give you 4 or 5. I think what's very clear here, though, is like this is a guy that can make big league hitters swing and miss. And even if they want to deploy him in single inning relief or just 2 inning relief, I think the fastball is going to tick up from 95. The splitter is still going to play, and then the slider is, of course, too. He threw 19 splitters, 15 of them were strikes. And again, the thing that stood out to me the most is the fastball would be in the same tunnel as then the splitter. So he would set, let's say, fastball belt high away, and then off of that it would be splitter starting belt high away that fades off the plate or dives down from there. And he'd do the same thing with the gyro slider to righties. But I feel like if he's able to sequence like that, he's going to have no problem being an asset for them and maybe a guy that, hey, let's stretch him out to 80 pitches because it's the postseason and let's give him a start here. I don't think it's crazy to consider that either, but he should be on that pitching staff one way or another.
Yeah, he's going to get innings and he's going to get important innings. It's not like a guy who you're going to, have as your, if you need him reliever, like whether it's starting or piggybacking, like he's going to get legit innings for the Blue Jays and he should because, especially these first month of big league appearances, it's just such a unique arm to pick up that I feel like you capitalize that
Yep.
and you take advantage of the fact that it is, going to be an uncomfortable at bat for so many hitters. Even the best of big league hitters are still not used to seeing an arm like this, even if they eventually adjust and he has to kind of figure it out from there next year and beyond, right? Right now it's new to most of these guys.
Especially, and if you weaponize them in single inning relief or multi inning relief, even in a series, these guys aren't going to get a second, third time in a single game to get to look at them, and it could be effective in that role. So I think that is a good point too. And the uniqueness, I think, is absolutely an asset for them.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Let's get into this the single A high A stars of the year. I didn't do it by hitters pitchers this time. I went by league because I was looking through the league all stars for everything. So we're going to start in the Cal League and then we'll make our way through single A. Same thing goes for high A. We'll go league by league. So starting with our first standout of the single A level, Eduardo Quintero of the Dodgers. Man, we've talked about him a number of times, but this guy just turned 20 3 days ago. So happy late birthday to Eduardo Quintero. Finishes the year in high A, still very impressive. But as a 19-year-old in single A this season, after a brief debut there last year, his 81 games in single A this year, 960 OPS, 160 WRC plus, a walk rate over 16%, striking out at a 22% clip, gets to high A. The numbers were a little worse, but still very good for a guy who just turned 20. You pair that with the fact that he stole almost 50 bags this season, plays a legit outfield. Quintero's got to be one of the bigger risers in the Dodgers system, and clearly one of the best players in single A this season.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I think that we've talked about it a few times, but the things that were already a strength in his game were continued, and maintained as he's climbed levels, and then he was able to shore up some weaknesses too. I think I hate to call it a weakness because he was 18 years old in 2024, and again just turned 19 at the end of the season, but he put the ball on the ground a little bit too much, and the EVs were a little bit lighter. But what stood out was you had decent contact rates, really good swing decisions, and you liked the mechanics overall. Then this year, he maintains that extremely low chase rate, almost to the decimal point. It's 18.9% this year. And then you still have roughly similar contact rates. The hard hit rate jumps by 5-6%, and the ground ball rate drops by nearly 10%. So you basically maintain all the good stuff, and then you improve your batted ball angles and hit the ball a little bit harder. That's going to bode well for your overall outcome, and that's why we saw him slug a lot more. I love the spray. I mean, it's just the air pullability is there clearly, and then you mentioned the bags, like that part of his game really elevated as well, and then he just continues to come along as a guy that looks like he can stick in center field. This is just a really really good prospect here in this Dodger system that I'm interested to see how aggressively they push him because we're talking about him as like a low A, star this year, and for good reason. He played the majority of his games there. But the fact that he got to high A as well and played 32 games there and posted an 823 OPS and only struck out 24% of the time, like I imagine he starts the year in high A again next year, but they could probably push him kind of quickly. It's just there's a crowded outfield now in Double A Tulsa as well, with Hope up there, with De Paula up there. Kendall George all of a sudden had a nice season. So they got a lot to sort out in the best way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just another guy to add into the mix there going forward, and he's going to be a legit piece one way or another. I mean, the difference between 27 games as a sample last year in single A, didn't have a single homer in those 27 games to start a single A career in 2024, gets there this year, 81 games, 14 home runs, 18 doubles, six triples in those 81 games. I mean, the power uptick is
It's
legit, like you said, and you
and there
pointed
might
it
be
out.
more. And he finished the year with 3 homers in high A in his last 5 games.
Yep.
So
There could be more still. This is another guy who's, trending towards the top 50 prospect in baseball in the not so distant future.
no doubt.
Next guy up is someone who I actually don't think we've even discussed on the show this year, and that's what's fun about this going through like total season stats because he might not have been a heat sheet guy at any point, but he's had a great year. Jacob Bresnahan of the Giants organization was a 2023 high school draft pick by Cleveland, and then went over to the Giants in one of those trades I think last year, and he put together a really good year as a 20-year-old, right? So a little bit slightly older for single A, but still not, as a high school pick, it's not like he's behind by any means. This season in 20, as his 20-year-old season, 93 innings of a 2.61 ERA for Bresnahan. The strikeout rate up there above 30 this season at that level. Walk rate a bit high for sure, but generally speaking, just a really good year, kind of start to finish for a guy who, is not a big time name in that Giants org, but ended up being one of the better pitchers in the Cal League all season and deserves a shout out here.
Yeah, when we did the Giant system, he was one where I was surprised, he is not more highly regarded in the industry because they acquired him, I think, in the Alex Cobb deal from the guards, but it's a fastball that gets great carry. I think he averages about 19 inches of induced vertical break from a pretty standard release height, and then he gets decent extension on that as well. He throws the fastball a lot, and I think that's part of it. That you want to see him lean on the secondaries a little bit more. It was like a 67% fastball usage this year, but opponents hit 200 against it with a 600 OPS. As the season progressed, he kind of started to find more confidence with the secondaries, and the splitter all of a sudden started to look like a really good pitch for him and looks like a plus offering. So if you've got that splitter working off of the high carry fastball from a lefty, that's going to play. And then the slider didn't look bad. I think that's the pitch that's lagging behind, but work in progress there. If he can throw more strikes, I think you can really easily envision a back end of the rotation lefty. Fastball average 92 and a half. I think there's room for more velo though, as he just kind of fills out and matures. He turned 20 in the end of June. So this does look like a really fun arm potentially for them. And even if you don't include or tack on to the numbers that you mentioned, he also threw a postseason outing where he went 4 innings of 1 run ball, 1 walk, 5 Ks. So he ended up throwing a decent amount of innings this year. You add that outing out there, he threw 97 innings this season, and you build on that and get closer to 110 next year, and it seems like a guy that could be on a pretty good track. I think the question is just going to be, can he miss the same amount of bats? He's not going to miss
Yeah.
the same amount, but can he miss a lot of bats still at high A and double A with stuff that maybe doesn't jump off the page, but is clearly good from a lefty?
And just put together quality start after quality start. That was kind of his MO this season, and someone who, not many pitchers in the Cal League fare all that well. It's typically generally single A as a whole. We're going to see a lot of pitchers kind of working through command issues, trying to figure out what they're going to throw. Right. I mean, it's definitely a developmental stage for a lot of these high school pitchers, and this is a guy who just all season looked really solid throughout the year. So
Yeah.
definitely deserving of a shout. The next pitcher, another high school draft pick, and one that you've been incredibly high on for quite some time since the draft. Both of us have been. Ryan Sloan of the Mariners organization is a guy who finished the year in high A, made 3 starts in his final last handful of outings, but 18 starts this season at the single A level for the Mariners, 70 and 2/3, a 3.44 ERA, but honestly a bit unlucky, I think there. The FIP was 2.9 for him. Doesn't walk anybody. Sloan had a walk rate of 5% on the year, 27% strikeout rate. The numbers aren't necessarily quite as blow you away as some other pitchers that we're going to talk about today. Ryan Sloan is just a good pitcher, man. Like this guy is just really good, and there's reason to keep believing that it's gonna get better and better. He's 19. He's not 20 until January, so he's
Yeah.
gonna go into next season already in high A as a 20-year-old.
Yeah, and I think that's the amazing part. And he threw 82 innings after coming straight out of high school ball, and I think he started to fade a little bit at the end of the year. You take away the two rough outings at high A, as I think he was just again running out of gas a little bit. He had a 3.38 ERA and a 2.89 FIP through those first 19 starts. I mean the strikeout to walk rate for a 19-year-old and making the leap to full season ball is remarkable. And as you mentioned, there's just more in there. When you're throwing strikes like that and the velocity is already sitting 95 and you're looking at a 6'5", 220-pound right-hander who easily can grow into more velo, and then he's already got the feel for a sweeper, a splitter, a cutter, like this is going to be a really good pitcher for a long time. And it just seems like the floor is so high for such a risky archetype as a prep right-hander. And then, of course, the ceiling, I don't need to sell you on that.
Yeah, do you think there's any of his pitches, from what you're looking at and what you know, is there any of his pitches that ticked up a lot? Because I know it's a pretty well-rounded arsenal for Sloan, but I'm curious to know if there's, in his first full season, if any particular pitches have taken a big step forward.
I would say probably the split. I don't know if people were talking about a splitter
Right.
too much with him, and that pitch was awesome for him this year. And I'd like to see him throw it a little bit more. He started to throw it more as the season progressed, but threw it about 10% of the time, and it was awesome. I also just didn't really expect the sweeper to be as gnarly as it was, and that I would say all the secondaries, honestly, but the sweeper I didn't think would be as sharp and have the teeth that it had. And then I really didn't think the splitter would be where it was at either. The interesting thing is his worst pitch is probably his fastball,
Hmm.
and that's 95. It's just that the shape isn't the best, but he could easily be sitting 97 in the next year or so, and maybe can find some ways to get a little bit more vert and get it further from the dead zone. If that happens, it's going to be scary.
And what's interesting is the fastball was actually pretty hyped up for him coming into the draft. And I remember in high school, it was very strong, obviously. And that changes. But like you could see that fastball trend the positive direction quickly. And then you've got two elite secondaries in that splitter and sweeper to play it off of. There's just a lot to like with Sloan. He's just a really good pitcher at
Uh,
19.
100%.
Next guy up is an interesting one. Raudi Rodriguez of the Angels organization. Kind of a random pull here, but someone that I just looked at the numbers. He made the All-Star team for Single A. A late round draft pick in 2023, was a 19th rounder, high school pick in 23, and was in the complex all of last year, and then this season played the entire year in Single A, 125 games, but posted a 130 WRC plus on the season. An 842 OPS, stole a bunch of bags, didn't get, particularly beat up with strikeout rate was in check. Just an interesting young, potential guy in the Angel system who just had a really good year.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't promote him to high
Yeah,
A,
me
like,
too.
with the way that they like to push prospects. But it, being that he was 21 to slash 22 years old for majority of the season, or 21 till July 7th, and then turned 22. It, a little bit older for that level with some swing and miss in the zone, but as you mentioned, he was able to keep that strikeout rate in check. The raw power is there for sure, though. I mean, he had a 90th percentile of 106.5 miles per hour, a hard hit rate of 46%. So this could be kind of an under the radar guy that, if he's able to hit enough, could be emergent in that Angel system. It's a pretty simple operation in the box too, so you hope that maybe he's able to continue to maintain the contact rates at least where they're at. I'd like to see a little bit more adjustability and things like that. It kind of seems like he's got one swing for one spot, but with how hard he hits the ball and the fact that he's providing some value on the base paths, and maybe he can play all three outfield spots, there's definitely intrigue here. I'm just curious to see how he handles high A pitching.
Yeah, not a guy I know a ton about, but I'm just curious to see how it progresses because it was a really good season, and the Angels can use any breakout guy they can get, and this is a guy who definitely broke out and marginally, compared to most guys in that system who just had a really good year, so worth giving a shout to there.
He finished the year too. I don't know if it counts in the statistics you were looking at too. They were playing in the postseason. He hit three more home runs in the postseason for N1 Empire, two in one game. So and it only helps his case.
Yeah, a bunch of homers, a bunch of stolen bases, just a good season. So a guy that had a great year at Single A and should open next year at High A, you'd have to think. The next guy up was the MVP of the Carolina League, and someone we've talked about a bunch. Caleb Bonemer of the White Sox organization. Man, this is a guy I've been following closely all year, as you know, and like just more encouraging of a first season than I think anybody expected from a 19-year-old guy who was drafted last season. This is his first professional season. He didn't play any games at the end of last year. It comes into single A and just, from start to finish, he had a little bit of a bump in the middle of the season, but really just looked way better than his age would indicate. It's, pretty good feel at shortstop compared to what a lot were expecting. I think he played some third too, and he looked good at third. Still probably a third baseman in the long term, but definitely held his own at shortstop while showing, high level exit velocities. The speed was better than I expected. The contact was a little better, only struck out at a 21% clip. I think the expectation was it would be a little bit more swing and miss than Bonemer actually showed. On the year, a 146 WRC plus at single A, gets to high for the last 2 weeks of the season and went off, posting, he had over 1,000 OPS in his first 2 weeks of high A ball. 19 years old, turns 20 soon, but Bonemer, biggest, up arrow prospect for the White Sox this season.
I mean, it's nuts. So final 40 games of the season at an OPS of 1,004, walking at a 15% clip, striking out at a 19% clip. It's funny. So I was talking about this with Jacob Marcy when I'm writing up this piece and conversation I had with him that'll be on justbaseball.com on Monday. But stiffer movers, sometimes people think you can't be stiff and athletic. You can. And it can actually be an asset. Think of it as like a coiled spring. And like when a spring is like tightly coiled, how much force there can be when it pops, right? Or like when it pushes out. And something I noticed with Bonemer is it's really simple operation, right? But you'll notice like he actually, as he's sitting in a stance, he'll actually kind of coil in and just sit there preset. And a lot of guys, I think it wouldn't really work for them. They'd get really stiff and they wouldn't be able to swing from there. But he's kind of just a naturally stiffer, compact guy. So I think it's a comfortable spot for him. And then he can just unleash from there. Again, I think about that like really tightly wound, spring there as an example. But that's why when you see him take some of these swings, it's like a one arm swing, and you
Yeah.
think, oh, that's going to look like a routine fly ball, and it just carries over the left field wall. He's a really tight turner and an explosive mover within like small confines. So I think that makes it a lot easier for a guy like him to just get his A swing off consistently and still do damage on what would presumably be a B swing for him. That they all kind of look the same.
Yeah.
The fact that he's able to hit the ball in the air to the pull side as consistently as he does, it seems like he's just got his moves down. And I think that's going to bode really well for him. You pair that with elite plate discipline for his age to level, and it seems like he's going to have a lot of success. I am interested to see how he handles stuff kind of working away from him, and if there's a little bit of that malleability to be able to just kind of work with the ball and drive it the other way. But this is usually the harder thing for guys to master. So to have this already, he just seems like it reminds me of Marcy in the respect of a stiff but good athlete that is leveraging that to create more force, and he's doing that. The air pole has been a big part of it. 30 doubles this year, man. Like, and the selectivity makes me feel a lot better about, okay, well, if he's not great at hitting stuff away from him, he's really good at shrinking the zone anyways. So he's
Yep.
going to be able to play to his strengths. This is definitely an up arrow guy in that White Sox system.
Yeah, and the organization loves him. They're fired up about what he's doing right now, and I think that he already showed he can handle high A, so he's going to start the year in high A at 20 years old. But like, I kind of expect him to be in double A sometime next season. I think that he's going to be good enough to be there, and as also within the organization now. Yeah, it's great if he continues to show well at shortstop, but he also doesn't need to. You've got Billy Carlson coming behind him, who should be in Kannapolis next season. You've got some other guys. It seems like Colson Montgomery's been holding his own for now. Like, it'd be nice for him to stick there. But if he ends up being your third baseman who just gets into even more power as he continues to develop with that discipline, that's totally fine too. And I think his athleticism and his arm will be good at third base, and it has been good at third base.
Absolutely.
The next pair of guys, just combined them. It's a duo. It's Milwaukee's, teenage wonders of Jesus Mate and Luis Peña. Couldn't do a single A episode without talking about these two. Everybody that's listened to this show consistently knows what these two did this season. Pretty ridiculous. Made now finishing the year at double A, but played 83 games at single A. Was good there, got even better at high A. And then Pena spent a little bit, didn't get to double A, but did get to high A too. Struggled at high A, but was even better than Made, honestly, at single A. Both these guys, Made being, both of them are 18. So Made is 18, until next season, until the spring, and Peña will turn 19 here in a couple months. But like for a duo of 18-year-olds, they just wowed at the start of the season, they wowed in the middle of the season, and yeah, Peña slowed down a little bit towards the end here, but just a great year from both these two in the Brewers org.
Yeah, I think you saw Peña maybe fade a little bit more, just physically,
Yeah.
than Made, but Peña also battled more injuries this year than Made as well. So I'm sure that was a part of it. But uh, I mean, these guys, both of them are so impressive. And Peña now will start the year next year in High A, and of course Made will start in Double A. And Made just might be in this rare echelon in terms of the hitting ability, but I still believe that they're pretty close to each other in terms of long term prospect intrigue. And I mean, Peña has is as much upside as just about anybody, right? When you look at the impact and you look at the bat to ball and you look at the speed and all the different things that he brings to the table. I think what happened with Peña too is he fatigued a bit. Is just he became a lot more expansive too, and you saw just the chase rate really climb up. Whereas Made was able to kind of maintain that patience, but both of these guys were hitting the ball really hard. Were just wowing with what they were able to do relative to what we're used to from 18/19-year-olds, really 18-year-olds the whole entire season here. So really just 18-year-olds. And the fact that Made just got better and better as the year progressed is nuts to me. And that he handled the double A, adjustment. But I think seeing how good Peña's numbers were in low A and even better than Made's, I think shows you a little bit of what the ceiling can be. I just think Made's game was more equipped to be able to translate more quickly, I think, to more challenging levels because of where the swing decisions were at, because he's a switch hitter that has, a pretty consistent swing now from both sides. But I mean, these guys are going to be still mostly in tandem, I think, moving forward. And I think Peña can close the gap and get to Double A sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, so okay, so Made, he plays. He's going to be still 18 going into next year. He plays a handful of games. What was it, 6, 7, 8 games here in Double A to finish
Yeah.
out the year? Do you? So he probably starts in Double, right? I only
Yeah.
he. No, there's no reason you're not going to put him down, right? Probably spends. Is it fair to say he just spends? He has the Sebastian Walcott kind of trajectory where he just spends the whole year in Double next year, or do you
That
think there's
that
a world where he goes quicker?
That would be the assumption. I think you just spend the whole year in Double next year. But sometimes they surprise you and they send him
Right,
back to high. I just think that would be weird. I think this is more the Choreo type of track.
right.
So I think put him in Double A and have him hang out there. If he struggles, he struggles. Like who cares? It's like the
Okay.
Walcott situation. And I don't think he will struggle because as hard as it is to hit in the Southern League, Biloxi is one of the few places where it's not as tough to hit. And I think they like the staff there, the environment, and I think that's a good team for him to be a part of there. I imagine he starts the year there in Double. Peña starts in High A, and then Peña has a chance, if he can really start hot in High A
Yeah.
to work his way up there as well. But both these guys, I mean, were just so impressive. When I look at Made on the year too, 792 OPS from the left side, 791 OPS from the right side.
Wow.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just what you love to see from a switch hitter.
And you don't see that often from a lot
No.
of young hitters, especially. You almost always have young hitters that have a side that's a little better than the other one. So to see him doing that at that level, it's just he's so good. He's just
Yeah.
so
The Brewers have the magic, man. And I'm excited to see
yeah.
just how these guys come back next year too, because they have all these plans in place for these guys. That's the thing. Like they were ready for Peña to struggle. Like that's the whole point. And now they already had a plan in place for when Peña struggles to unlock that next gear. The same thing with Made. I'm excited to see how these kids come back next year.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. That's obviously two of the brightest stars at the lower levels all season and are gonna be, next season as well, probably. The next guy up, I think it's fair to say he might be the single A pitcher of the year overall. David Shields of the Royals organization. We talked about him a couple weeks ago on the heat sheet. This is a guy who has just taken his, pedigree to an entirely different level. Just turned 19. So he spent pretty much the entire season as an 18-year-old after being drafted as a 17-year-old in the second round last season out of high school. spent one game at the complex, immediately then goes to single A. In 18 starts for Shields, it's a 2.01 ERA with a walk rate of 5%, a strikeout rate nearing 30, a whip at point or 1.02 on the year. Really, really good season from Shields, just pretty dominant. And they were super cautious with his innings because he's an 18-year-old high school draft pick. So of course you're going to be cautious with his innings. But I'm not sure there was a guy that impressed more than him at the single A level on the pitching side this year.
From a statistical standpoint, I mean, no way. And I mean, just turning 19 10 days ago and doing what he did this year, it was remarkable. I mean, I remember going back to, I think when we were recapping that draft and talking about what the Royals had done and what stood out to me with Shields is, he was a switch hitter as well. And I remember just early video, the athleticism is what really stood out to me and why I thought he was intriguing. And you see it with the way he moves on the mound, and it makes me excited about maybe what he can potentially unlock moving forward. He's 6'2", 210. Because the fastball, it averaged 90 miles an hour this
Right.
year. But he creates this crossfire delivery. It's a loose, whippy arm action. And then he located the curveball really well this year. I think the changeup and the cutter, like he could still locate a little bit more consistently. And even then, he only walked 5% of batters. So just being able to establish the heater, and it was all four quadrants, a lot of confidence being able to locate it. And I love the fluidity and looseness to his delivery. It kind of reminds me of like Connolly Early in the way that he moves on the mound. And when you have that, it's a really exciting template to build on. And then he's going to be 19 years old for the entirety of next year, has all this success at low A already under his belt. And even though they were being cautious with his innings, because he was available and responded well and didn't see his velocity drop as the year progressed, they kept giving him starts, right? He got two more postseason starts too. So he ended
Yep.
up throwing 85 and 2/3. Like this was a really, really good season. And if that fastball, think about it, what he did this year with that fastball at 90.2 miles per hour, if that is sitting 92, 93 next year with the deception that he clearly creates, slight crossfire, I mean, all of a sudden he could be really in the driver's seat. And then you imagine the changeup progresses a little bit off of it. This can be a guy that is one of the more exciting pitchers in the lower minors.
That's exactly right. And what I was going to say to that point is like the breaking ball was probably the only like plus pitch from like
Mm-hmm.
looking at the literal stuff of it, right? And like the
Yes.
movement on it, right? So like that pitch is disgusting. But when you think about the fact that the fastball and changeup have a lot of room to grow still, and the command is already so good with them, right? Like if you see the movement on those pitches and the velo for the fastball, right? The changeup get a little bit more feel, right? If those pitches tick up, you're looking at a guy who just had the best season in single A maybe by the numbers and only had one pitch that you could say was a true plus, right? So you pair that with the command he has and the potential for him to keep growing. It's still so young. He probably goes into the season in high A as a young 19-year-old, right? I mean, he could get to double A at 19 years old. I'm not saying you need to rush that. If he spends the whole year in high A too, great. Like there's no need to rush it, but there's still so much room to grow for a guy who was already so good.
I'd be looking at Robbie Snelling and saying,
Mm.
I hope he has that kind of
Yeah.
trajectory. And Snelling was a little bit louder, not that much, but just a little bit louder with his stuff and his pro day. But he was also a little bit older, if I'm not mistaken. So I think I'd be looking at that template if I'm a Royals fan and saying, oh, I would love to see that progression there from Shields. And I don't think it's crazy to look forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. Next one up is someone who I'm not super familiar with until recently a little bit. Maxton Martin of the Rangers organization was a 2023 high school draft pick, a later pick, not a ton of pedigree. Last season spends the whole year at the complex. This year spent the majority of the year in single A, finishes the last couple weeks here in high A. On the season as a whole, with a couple weeks of high A built in where he really started to get going even more, a 130 WRC plus on the season for Martin, an OPS just under 800 on the year. Seems like a guy who just was pretty productive all year. The power was pretty solid, and just got continued to just go to work and be a pretty good hitter in his first full season of affiliated ball for the Rangers.
Yeah, kind of came out of nowhere. And
Yeah,
those guys are always fun and exciting. Hammers fastballs, and I think that's how he was able to kind of make his living here. I'm interested to see if he can hit the secondaries well enough as he gets to more challenging levels. He's definitely an aggressive hitter, but he was an ambusher, and it worked for him. Hit a velocity pretty well in general as well. And then another guy that can hit the ball hard in the air to the pull side as a left-handed hitter pretty consistently. And I think that allowed him to get to a lot of extra base hits. It's not just the homers, what, seven triples. He also had 27 doubles. This
Hmm.
is a pretty quick bat that you have to be excited about just the emergence there. I think the chase and maybe a little bit too much swing and miss might be a challenge, but he went from kind of obscure to, hey, at least a guy worth following.
Yeah, and at least a guy that like within a Rangers system is like a young. They don't have a ton of young hitters that I think are super talked about within that system, right? So a guy that's on the younger end, a left-handed bat, just someone to keep an eye on and put together a really solid year.
Yeah, I think the bat speed's the calling card there, and yeah, you see some bat speed from the left side, it's worth a follow.
Doesn't hurt at all. Two guys from the Rays organization that I combined here because they spent the whole year mostly on the same roster. Actually they spent the entire year, and then the latter got one start in High A. But Theo Gillen and then Jose Urbina of the Rays organization. Gillen is a guy who we've talked about a couple times on the show this year. Dealt with a couple injuries, but made his pro debut last year as a 19-year-old. Then only played a handful of games. This season being his first full pro year, had an injury that knocked him out for a little bit, but in the 73 games that he played, man, it was good. A 149 WRC plus. The speed is plus plus potentially. I mean, 36 stolen bases across 73 games. The power is still kind of coming along, but walks a ton. Really, really patient hitter, and someone who should be able to stick as a pretty plus defender, hopefully, in center field. What is the steps he's taken, and then we'll get to Urbina after.
Yeah, I think so. The big concern going into this year is health with him. Like the only reason why I think he wasn't, top 10 or closer to a top 10 pick was all the injuries that he's had through his career. And you mentioned that he was hurt a little bit this year. So I was thinking about it. I'm like, did he quell some of that concern? Did he make it worse? It was a calf injury at the start of the year, and that was like more spring training time. That happens all the time. And then he was still back pretty quickly and good to go. And then it was a broken finger. And I don't know if I'm gonna have
Yeah.
much concern about a broken finger. He played 73 games this year, and he didn't fade. And I thought overall he looked really solid. So I would say all in all, I was encouraged. Like Braylor Guerrero can't play 73 games right now. So Emmanuel Rodriguez can't play 73 games right now. So if we're talking about very injured guys that have like a kind of a crazy history here, I thought there was some encouraging signs of the fact that he was able to play 70 plus, and we'll see how it goes into next year. But you mentioned the underlying, yes, it was only 5 homers, but he had a 44% hard hit rate, and it's a really smooth swing. It's not like he's swinging out of his shoes or anything like that. So it's pretty easy power for him that I think he's going to continue to tap into more as he gets more comfortable elevating, and just I think ambushing in the right spots because he's very patient. It's like a 13% chase rate, which I love. I mean, that's one of the lowest chase rates in the lower
Yeah.
minors. That's what really helps the floor as well. You have a smooth swing with a minuscule chase rate and good underlying batted ball data. It's going to be a really good profile. But I think just getting more comfortable of getting the ball in the air and utilizing some of that raw power that's above average. I think that's the next step there where Gillen can become, a really fun player here. And I think he's going to be a good player for a long time.
And if your baseline is a center fielder who can be a solid defender, who's going to steal a ton of bags and who's going to walk a bunch, right? Like all of that offensive progress, you're willing to wait on because you have a guy who, at the very least is going to be a solid center fielder, steal you bases and walk. And then the offensive game is coming along for sure, but you're okay being a little more patient with a guy who's had some injuries, who's only 20 years old, when the floor is already high because of
Yep.
those other factors, right?
100%. He's going to get on base. And that, I don't think there's any question about that.
Definitely. Jose Urbina. Tell me a little about him. This is a guy who made, a number of appearances last year, kind of was starting in the bullpen a little last season in the complex, got up to single A, but then this season at the single A level, 19 starts, 92 and a third, of a 2.05 ERA in that span, pretty low walk rate, didn't miss a ton of bats, but still a strikeout rate of 26%, and then gets up to high A to finish out the year and made one start there at the end of the year and should start there next year, and it's still only 19.
Yeah, it's just another one of those skinny, just loose, electrifying arms that the Rays have in the system here. And I mean, he had a stretch this year where he was just dominant. But even I mean, the whole year was great, but there's a stretch here of like a handful of starts where I think he went 25 consecutive innings without allowing an earned run. And it may have been more than that. I'm just going by like a game log basis, so it could have easily been more. But he went 30 innings of allowing one earned run, which is just ridiculous. It's a live fast arm and it allows him to average 96.5 on the fastball, but then can really spin the slider. I think that looks like an above average pitch. The curveball flashed as well, and then he started to throw a changeup. If he can just have that be anywhere near the zone, you've got a four pitch mix here all of a sudden that looks like it could be pretty fun. So at 19 years old to be doing what he's doing already, like the Rays seem to have a lot of these guys. Sometimes there's the injury risk with just the live arm, and you think about like the Yaniel Correa types, but
Yeah,
when you have a bunch of them, some of these guys are gonna hit here, and I think this is another option of a guy that at least looks like he could be a really good reliever. But now with the pitch mix getting more diverse, and I think some really dominant stretches here this season, he looks like he could be another budding pitching prospect in this Rays system.
definitely. The last guy on the single A side before we move over to high A might be one of the best hitters at this level all year. Alfredo Duno. We've talked about him a bunch on this show, so we don't need to get too deep into him. But this has just been an absurd season from Duno for a guy who just took his, an interesting guy to keep an eye on to like this is an elite hitting prospect. 18 home runs in single A on the year, 164 WRC plus, walked more than he struck out for a guy who's massive, which like you don't expect at
Yeah.
all. This guy's gonna be, what, top. It's hard because it's still you're not quite sure if he's gonna stick behind the plate, but like the bat alone is so good.
Well, the defense has come along to a point where I feel pretty good about it now. And if that's the case, like it seems like he's going to be a guy that could be towards the top 50. I would have liked to see him play a little high A ball this year, but I also understand like he's missed some time over the last couple years with injury. And I think that's just kind of a theme too. But the fact that he was healthy this year is huge. He played 110 games if you include the postseason,
Yeah.
and caught a lot and threw out a lot of runners. And I thought the body might back up a little bit, and that's why I thought maybe he wouldn't, project the best behind the dish. And instead, this guy's turning in plus run times down the line at 6'3", 250 makes no sense. And then I was watching him move behind the dish, and I'm like, how is he doing that? So he might just be like an outlier mover for his size. And
Yeah.
then there is swing and miss within the zone, but he has found a way to hedge that so well because now the EVs are plus, and he chases at a sub 15% clip. So that on top of the fact that, okay, if they're swing and miss in the zone, you at least want to have decent out of zone contact rates. He does. So when he does need to spoil, he's pretty good at it, but he rarely chases. And then when he is making contact within the zone, it's high quality contact. All of a sudden, you're not as worried about that swing and miss within the zone. I think it is going to be interesting to see if that strikeout rate climbs as he goes to more challenging levels, and it probably will. But the fact that he's able to offset that with the walks the way that he does, yeah, I thought it was a 30 hit tool, to be honest, and it might still be a fringy hit tool at best, but it seemingly doesn't matter now that the plate discipline could be 70 grade. The quality of contact is clearly there, and he's going to potentially stick behind the dish. Then you pair that with the fact that he's hitting the ball in the air consistently, and it's to all fields. This is a really fun, unique player that I can't wait to see at the higher level. And I'm glad I was able to get some live looks at him, late in the season here.
Yeah, he's just one of the better breakouts of the year, I think, and someone that's going to be, I don't think you can say there's a better catching prospect than him this season in terms of just the output he did and the how much he raised his stock on the year.
He had a stretch of 19 games to wind down the season if you don't include the postseason. His final 19 games of the regular season at low A, he hit 9 homers, walked 18 times, and struck out 10 times. He was just
Silly.
simply too good for low A, but they're like, we don't need to bring you up at this point. Just go play the playoffs. And that's what he
Right.
did.
Which is fine
But
for a guy who's a 19-year-old catcher.
yeah,
It's not just like a random position. He's not just sitting in DHing or playing first base. Like he was catching most games in that stretch.
and the mechanics are just so much better. This is a and they were catching him a lot, like 5 days in a row sometimes, trying to keep him in that line, or at least 5 games in a row where he was catching. And then he finished out the season catching 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row, no DH in between. So I think you got to be really encouraged with that side of things too. The fact that he was able to stay healthy and catch as much as he did.
Yep, 100%. Before we get into our high eight standouts of the year, let's take a quick break.
Before we get back into it, you may know that Lids has trading cards now after our partnership for Topps Chrome. And now we're back to tell you that will be an exclusive retailer for the upcoming Bowman Chrome release on September 23rd. I actually just broke down the Bowman Chrome product on Sports Card CEO. That'll be going out next week, right around release time, actually, I think on the 22nd. If you want to hear a little bit more about all of the different top prospects in there, go check out the Sports Card CEO. That's our collectibles podcast here on the Just Baseball Network. But Lids is your exclusive in-store destination for Bowman Chrome hobby boxes, with 101 Lids hobby shops receiving them on September 23rd. You'll pay retail price for these boxes at Lids versus paying marked up prices at secondhand shops or missing out on pre-sales. Just like the Topps Chrome release, where we had a live break and autograph signing with Griffin Conine and Boca Raton, we'll have another live break in a Lids for the Arizona Fall League. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully, going to have a player there with us, maybe chasing some of his own cards in there or some of his teammates' cards in there. The set features some of the league's hottest young stars and prospects, along with first Bowmans of the top IFA signings. They also threw in a shoeless Joe Jackson first this year. So that's a fun little chase in this Bowman Chrome as well, because he's never actually really had a card. The other thing that's really fun about this is if you text baseball, that's just the word baseball, to 20917, you'll receive 20% off your next headwear and apparel purchase. Some exclusions do apply. This discount will get you 20% off key headwear releases like the fall color pack, and I'm excited about that because I think we're going to be getting some, so we'll show it off as well. And any postseason gear that you need for October, all you have to do is text baseball to 20917 to receive that 20% off. Lids will also be celebrating Collector Appreciation Day on September 20th. So if you go to your local Lids and show a Topps card, you get 25% off your order, including all trading card purchases. So literally on the 20th, just go to your local Lids, show a card, a Topps card, and you get 25% off your order. So they'll probably still have some Topps Chrome in stock there and things like that. But very excited about the Bowman Chrome checklist. Some of the players we talked about today actually might even be in that product. And I think it'll be really fun to go pick those cards up and let us know who you're chasing. Reminder, you can text baseball to 20917 to get that discount. And then on Card Collector Appreciation Day on the 20th, just bring that Topps card in to your local Lids.
Getting back into our high A standouts from this season, we'll start with a guy who got some serious accolades. We talk about multiple guys in the Tigers organization, top prospects, but this guy isn't necessarily one of the top guys in that org. But Izaac Pacheco in the Tigers organization had a really, really good season at the high A level and might have got outshined a little bit by his teammates, who we'll talk about next week. Who had multiple teammates who we'll talk about next week, but spent the entire season in high A. And Pacheco in 99 games put up a 155 WRC plus, an OPS nearing 900 on the year. Strikes out a fair amount. Definitely a guy that's going to whiff, but he takes his walks. So, it's not that the strikeouts don't come with some walks. And the power, was very apparent. 17 home runs, 25 doubles on the year for Pacheco. What you got on Pacheco, and kind of what does it look like going forward for a guy who's almost 23, but coming off of a huge season?
I was always intrigued by him, and I was disappointed over the last
Yeah.
couple of years because it was a guy that I thought that swing was going to play. I may have even picked him out as a breakout prospect a couple of years ago, and then I had some cards even that I sold for like pennies on the dollar. But he hit the living crap out of the ball this year. I think that's a big thing. He's going to strike out, but I think if he can skew enough to the three true outcomes, there's enough power there. It was an EV90 of 107 miles per hour and a hard hit rate of 54%. So you have that going for you. I think maybe it could be a bulk platoon guy, 907 OPS against righties. I think that's maybe what you're looking for there. But I think a huge step in the right direction for a guy that looked like he was kind of trending towards prospect obscurity. So I think from that lens alone, encouraging, and it's clearly plus raw power.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's just an interesting guy to watch. It's been an up and down trajectory, right? So he spent 2023 in high A and then spends last year, goes down to single, gets back up to high A, but struggles there at the level, struggled in 23 also. So 2 years in a row of struggling at the level, but seemed to really find it this year. So this is a guy who, he'll get to double A next year. I think you'd have to
That'll be the
think, I thought
test.
he would have got there. And that's where it's like, okay, you've seen him in high A for 3 seasons now. Like that's where you got to see it again. But it was so many positive steps taken this year that you'd hope that he can carry at least some of that over in Double A next season.
Yeah, that'll be the big test.
Yeah, for sure. That'll definitely be the mark. But one of the better high A seasons this year in terms of raw production. He's up there with pretty much anyone at this level. Next guy up, who we talked about on the heat sheet about a month ago, I want to say, Josh Hartle of the Guardians organization, one of the best pitchers at the high level, finishes the year with 2 starts in Double A to round out his season. Big left-hander out of the draft last season out of Wake Forest. This is a guy who just really just carved all season. He's not going to strike out the world, but he just gets a ton of ground balls and just continues to get out 62% ground ball rate at the high level this season while rocking a 2.35 ERA on the year for Hartle.
Yeah, I mean the Guardians had I think followed him closely in the draft, and then we're excited about the opportunity to acquire him, and then just seeing he's a guy that only really needed to tick up 1 or 2 miles per hour, and even just sitting 91, 92 this year made a huge difference. He was also getting a little bit more arm side run and heaviness to the fastball, and that's where he got the ground balls. He finished the year with a 1.10 ERA over his final 8 starts, which includes two Double A starts, as you alluded to. So I fills up the zone, gets ground balls, and he misses enough bats. He just screams back into the rotation starter that I think a lot of people thought he could be going into his draft year at Wake Forest before he just had that clunker of a year. So he only allowed 2 home runs this entire season. It's just a bowling ball, and I think that's going to give him a great chance of being a big league arm who could just eat innings in the back of a rotation, and he may be able to move relatively quickly if he has a hot start to the year in Double A next year as well.
Yeah, Hartle being in the guards organization too, like I think is going to just help him round out the arsenal even more and maybe get a little bit more whiff as he kind of moves up the ranks, right? Like he didn't get hit at all, but I think you could see a little bit more of an uptick with some of the swing and miss as he gets up next year to Double A, and then beyond that, even if he can just keep mixing and matching the way he does. If you see the stuff tick up a half a notch, like with the way he executed this year, it could help even further for him.
Yeah, he added a sweeper. I don't know who gets credit for that, but he added a sweeper this year, and it seemed to just give him a different look horizontally, and opponents hit below 200 against it. And I think that was a huge part of his arsenal and his success this year.
Yeah, definitely. Another guy we've talked about plenty on this show, Josue De Paula of the Dodgers in High A this season. He finishes the year also in Double A, but in High A, like he went from a guy who was top 20 tier to like I don't know how high you're thinking about ranking him at the end of the season update in October, but like it's hard to not think about pushing him even further from where he was 2 months ago in the rankings just because of what he did this season. 143 WRC plus on the year at the high level through 98 games. In that time, walk rate 19%, strikeout rate 20% for DePaula. The power is there, but I think we still think there's more for him to get to in terms of the power
Right.
production, right? 12 home runs, 16 doubles, but like you're still looking at a guy that it just turned 20 this during the season this year, spent the whole year in High A, and like you're expecting even more impact there going forward, I think.
Yeah, and he was hurt at the end of July.
Yeah, couple
Missed
weeks.
like a month-ish, almost like 3 weeks and change. Came back from injury, went like 0 for 20 something, and then after that, just rattled off in his final 10 games in high A before getting promoted. He hit 395 with an
Yeah.
1179 OPS, walked more than he struck out. Then he did get to Double A and he went hitless in 17 at bats. Well, welcome to Double A, but he didn't strike out. I think there was just some bad luck. Uh, there's still I'm waiting for that raw power to fully convert into game power. I think he took a step in that direction this year with the 12 homers, 16 doubles, but I think there's even more to tap into there. So I'm excited to see him just keep inching towards that. But the blend of field to hit approach and raw power is just a trifecta that you love to see. And there's
Yeah.
just clearly so much more in there, and it's such a smooth swing from the left side.
Yeah, it's just a very good prospect. And like you said, it's going to get crowded real quick for the Dodgers in their minor league ranks and the outfield, especially. I mean, that's an embarrassment of riches in the outfield side of things. And
Yeah, we're not
uh,
even talking about Mike Sirota, who's out for the season, right? And like they've got a laundry list of fun
ridiculous
players.
amount of talent. Do you think DePaula, so he gets to Double A at the very end of the year. He probably starts in Double A next season. What do you see as a timeline for DePaula? Because like you don't need to rush him. You're the Dodgers. You have plenty of talent, but like could DePaula be starting on the Dodgers in 2027? Like I don't think
I
that's
think
crazy.
I think that's the timeline you're looking at because you
Yeah.
want him to kind of finish
Yeah.
out this development too. You don't want him to get up there in fight or flight mode
Right.
and he's never fully figured out how to air pull at the clip that you want and things like that. And you also want him to stay healthy and play more than 102 games. So I think 2027 is that
Okay.
solid ETA for him, and what would make the most sense. And but could be a break camp
Right.
2027 guy with a strong
Right.
year this coming
Exactly.
season.
If he goes off in double A, then you're like, okay, that's probably a guy who you feel comfortable moving quickly through the triple A level, depending on how the double A goes to start next year.
Yeah.
Next guy up, we have talked about also. This is a number of these guys who just were good all year and also good in spurts. Daniel Eagen of the Diamondbacks organization at the high A level this season. Another guy who finishes in double A, made 4 starts in double A to end the year and this, he slowed down a bit. Just, I think, long season, right? It's his first full season coming out of college last year. But in high A this season, 19 starts at a 2.49 ERA on the season. Didn't give up any home runs, less than 0.65 homers per nine given up by Eagen. Strikeout rate super high at the high level, 34% at that level, 106 whip, just dominance all around. And yeah, he's a college arm, he's an advanced college arm, so you kind of expect him to be dominant, but also was a small college guy, like Presbyterian College. It's not like he
Yeah.
was facing SEC guys all the time, right? So like high A was still probably, marginally a challenge for him, and he just absolutely crushed it. Going to be 23 going to next season. You got to think with the D-backs being where they're at, like if he gets through high A smoothly, like he could easily be a big piece for them pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, and the way he finished the year at high A, where he had 2 starts, there was a 3 start stretch even with the first start in double A, where I mean he went 20 and 2/3 innings scoreless, consecutive 4 hits allowed in that span, 4 walks, 29 strikeouts. And then I just think he ran out of gas. His fastball velocity was down a tick over his final 3 starts, and that's where he got roughed up in double A. But this is just a lot of innings for him. So I think that was just a big part of it. He threw 117 in the thirds innings this year. So, I mean, he was nowhere near that at Presbyterian last year. So I think that was mostly what it was. You had a pitcher here that I think was one of the best in that Diamondbacks org. And now they acquired a lot of guys that are intriguing as well. But in terms of a guy that started there and pitched the whole year there, I thought he was as exciting as anybody. He can really spin the baseball. I mean, the curveball looked like a plus pitch. The slider looked solid as well, and then the splitter he started to mix in a little bit more, and that looked like it could be a decent third offering. So it's really about trying to mitigate and work around the fastball that is just okay. And I think that's why he felt it when he was down a tick. But when you have a trio of secondaries like that, 6'4", 200 pounds as a right-hander, he seems like he could has a great chance to at least be a back end rotation starter.
Yeah, and could be a guy that moves pretty quickly with those secondaries. Like you said, I think with the fastball, if it can survive, then you can mix and match those secondaries and be a guy who could be pretty effective and at least be a starter for Arizona in the near future.
Yep.
Gage Stanifer of the Blue Jays organization. We've talked about him a number of times on the show, recently at least, especially because he just has been really, really good all season on the year. He started in single A, makes his way to high A, ends up finishing the year in double A, so climbs 3 levels for the Blue Jays, but spent most of the season in high A, where he had a 3.2 ERA. The strikeout rate was absurd in high A. It was a 36% strikeout rate in that time. Still, the command is still like coming along. I wouldn't say it's, he still is somewhat of a work in progress command wise, but stuff wise and just the way he dominated the season, really, really impressive from a guy who was a 19th round high school pick a few years back.
Yeah, I mean it's another guy that fits the archetype that the Blue Jays continue to attack, which is high carry fastball, and then a lot of stuff that works downward
Yep.
and just creating that vertical separation. And he has a fastball that averaged like 17 and change of induced vertical break, but like 12 and a half a run. And I think the carry really plays up. And then off of that, it's a banger curveball that I was clearly a plus pitch this year. Opponents had a 380 OPS against. And then kind of this gyro cutter, that really dives downward as well, just shorter break, and then a changeup as well. But just that fastball that he can establish with some run at the top, and then everything working downwards off of it seems to be what the Blue Jays are having a lot of success with. Cal Steven, who they traded, like that was another guy that had that same kind of archetype of stuff, and then of course Yesavage. This is one of the best performers in that system, and at 21 years old to do what he did. This is another arm. I think that the presence of Stanifer made the Blue Jays a little bit more okay trading a Cal Steven when you're able to get a Shane Bieber. But Stanifer I think is right in the same breath with him and turned in just a dominant year. Opponents hit 183 against him.
Yeah, and just again, I think that's a really good point you make there about just the fact that he was one of a number of guys who gave the Blue Jays a little more confidence to go all in, to push a little bit this year, right? Like you feel a little more confident trading a Kendry Rojas and a Cal Steven because of some of the guys that broke out of their system. There was a number of other ones we could mention, but Stanifer is kind of the prime example here of a guy who went from like, oh, maybe he's something interesting to like this is a legit pitching prospect now. Gets to Double A at the end of the year, like only made I think what two starts there in Double A, but he'll start next season in Double A
Yep.
as a guy who's still 22 years old going into next year.
Yeah, he's got a chance to be another one of those guys that moves kind of quickly through their system.
Yeah, and could be a sneaky big piece for them in the near future. Bo Davidson of the Giants organization, really interesting one. This was an undrafted guy who, pretty much no pedigree coming into the year. He ends up playing a good amount of games in Double A, so he barely fits the criteria for this. But in his 72 games in High A, 152 WRC plus for him on the year. Just really good year overall. Even when you combine the Double A stats for him, 18 home runs this season, just a good amount of movement. He got a pretty good walk rate. Bo Davidson's a guy that just has just trended up for 2 years in a row now. Honestly, last season he showed a lot, and then this season, at the next level, just continued to show that same thing, and then slowed down a bit in Double A, but was still more than holding his own at Double A.
Yeah, and 2023 Bowman Chrome guy too, or 2025 Bowman Chrome guy, excuse me, too. So that's a guy that I'd be happy to pull out of the product as well. But yeah, he's just an interesting case because yes, he's 23 years old. It was 22 for the majority of the season, but he's a later bloomer because he took a year off of playing and is kind of a JUCO guy. So I don't want to fully put a ceiling on a guy relative to some of the others that we do that are like 23 years old in Double A. And every time you check, he's just getting better and better and better. You can't really teach the bat speed. The bat to ball keeps getting better. The swing decisions keep getting better. He just looks like a high probability big league outfielder. And then the fact that he's coming along defensively in center field too, that really takes some pressure off of the bat. He's a really solid prospect. And I still think there's more in there, right? Like he's still trying to find the quality of contact against secondaries that he's able to produce on fastballs. Like on fastballs, he had an EV90 of 107 miles per hour this year and a 983 OPS. And he took steps in the right direction. When we talked about the Giant system, I broke it down how his moves have been a lot more connected. I think the upper body and the lower body were kind of out of sync at points, and that would make it hard for him to stay back on spin. He did a lot better job of that this year, but I think there's even more ground to make up there. And if the quality of contact could be anywhere close to where it is against fastballs with the secondaries, I mean, all of a sudden, I think you can start to really think about 25 plus home run power. But he hit 18 this year with 7 triples and 16 doubles. And when he gets into them, he can really hit them. So, I mean, we saw homers 112. Like, there's a lot of bat speed here. So, he could be a guy that fully puts it together at 25 years old, and I don't think anybody would blink. So, fun player and took a huge step in the right direction this year.
Yeah, someone you sound very high on him even compared to I think the consensus of him because he definitely has gotten a lot of hype here over the last year and a half or so. But someone that I think it seems like you think could be a pretty solid big league player and for a guy who was undrafted and those are the stories like this is a guy you're gonna root for this guy like that's a guy I mean you gotta root for players like
Easily. And
for sure.
bulk platoon, I think, is probably where he fits,
Yeah,
but 890
sure.
OPS against righties. It was 668 against lefties. We'll see if that comes along against lefties, but yeah, I think even more so if he's a bulk platoon guy playing all three outfield spots, that's going to be a valuable piece.
For a guy that again you didn't even
Yeah.
draft like you put no
You
draft
found
value.
in the Coastal
Right?
Plains League. Yeah.
So yes, you feel great about that if you're the Giants for sure.
Yeah.
Two more pitchers here to round out High A. Kyle Carr wins South Atlantic Pitcher of the Year, so he was one of the top pitchers at the high level of the Yankees organization. Third round pick 2 years ago, JUCO guy, and he, in 22 starts at the high A level, a 1.96 ERA for Carr on the year. It's a low strikeout rate. He doesn't get a ton of he gets a good amount of ground balls, but I'm curious like what you think some of the keys for his success were because this is a guy who it was 22 at the beginning of the year, turned 23 during the season, left-hander, but the command was good, not great. The stuff, he got a decent amount of whiff, but not a ton. What let Kyle Carr just unlock this just really, really good season prior to a Double A promotion a few weeks ago?
It's funny. A lot of people I really respect had him circled going into last year, and
Hmm.
and he just didn't play great. He just didn't throw very well. And but here he is this year, kind of validating. I think a lot of people that were very high on him. It's deception, And I think he stays closed for a long time. Body comes at you, and then the arm's like the last thing you see. So I think that part of it, and then everything works so well horizontally, and he's just really able to rip the ball. I think with some late bite to it, the slide or the
Here's the
sweeper
1-2.
was dominant for him. But the fastball averaged 91 miles an hour, like or 90 and a half really. But he goes four seamer, sinker, and then sweeper, and then I think just those different looks, kind of going in all different directions, was really effective for him. And then just the way he's able to hide the ball, I think was a big part of it. I do think that the built-in deception was a big reason why he was able to be so effective.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense for sure. I think it's a guy who, we'll see how it plays up at the next level, right? He got up to double A and struggled there in 3 starts, but only 3 starts, of course, so you're not putting much into that. I think you start him in double A next year, and you hope after 2 full seasons in high A and this season being really, really great, you'd hope to see that he continues some of that into double A next year and can at least be like a, back rotation guy because of that mixing and matching. And even if the stuff isn't outlier or anything, you're thinking can at least be a piece in one way or another, the way he threw this year.
Yeah, at least has taken himself to a point where it looks like he could be like a depth arm that
Right.
just funky enough to eat innings for you when you need.
Definitely. Last guy is someone who I actually thought last year had a little bit of a, had a pretty impressive moments and points of the season. Michael Forret of the Orioles organization looked really solid at times last season in single A and then got up to high A, struggled a little bit more there. This year, he opens the year in high A, 16 outings in high A for Forret, a 1.51 ERA in that span, a strikeout rate at 33% at that time, the walk rate in check, gets up to double A for a couple starts here down the stretch. The Orioles were very cautious with his innings this year, so he only threw
Very.
74 innings on the season, which I think was interesting to note there, but gets to double A and had a lot of success there in his first 3 starts at that level. Just really good results, but still like not a ton of innings, less innings than last season, a lot less innings than last season, which I thought was interesting there. Maybe they're just kind of protecting him because the numbers were really good in the innings he did throw this year.
I mean, they were fantastic. I mean, we were talking about it when we broke down the Orioles system, and our friend Thomas Nestico, TJ Stats, like had for it as the number one pitcher in the Orioles system. We were just kind of talking about how we could see that, but then also some of the things that just held me back at the time of writing the Orioles system, and it was just kind of the workload. Like, is the fastball going to play the same way in that workload? But the thing is, the fastball velocity got stronger as the season progressed, so that was encouraging. He also held it into those 50, 60 pitch spots. We just never really saw him go past 60 pitches until the final 2 outings of the year, where he finally went 76 and 72 pitches. So that was encouraging to see. But just the pitch mix is really exciting. I mean, you have a ton of in zone whiff on a fastball, slider, curveball, changeup, all of which we're generating good in zone whiff numbers. The slider and the curveball particularly performed really well. And when opponents are hitting 157 against you with a 436 OPS, you're doing something right. So I think there's a lot of, I think, deception with the slight crossfire. Then you also have the way that the arsenal kind of works in all different directions from this release
Mm.
point that seems to be hard for hitters to pick up. And then off of that, I just think everything kind of works in every which way where you're getting a lot of weak contact and guys thinking that they're getting the barrel to it, and then late movement gets it off the end, whatever it may be. But I think the other side is just how much whiff. 32% strikeout rate's crazy, and the whiff within the zone. So there's clearly just a visual component that maybe isn't fully showing in the TrackMan data that has allowed him to have a ton of success. And I'm very interested to see if he's able to maintain that at double A with, larger workload and more advanced hitters. But he was pretty good through the first two double A starts. The first one was good. Second one was shaky. So I'm very excited to see how he does. Or, sorry, first one was good. Second one was pretty good. Third one was shaky. So I'm very excited to see how that looks, over a
Yeah.
full season at double A. But he increased his stock as much as any arm in this system this year. I don't think there's any doubt in that.
Do you remember how high you had him? I think you had him pretty like he was in that
He was in the
ranking.
top 10.
Yeah.
But
Which, is again for a guy who was a 14th round pick 2 years ago and
well,
has,
that's what the Orioles do. They've done a
that's
really good
yes.
job with the later round pitchers of late, and Fred's just another example of that.
Yeah, I mean, even with like all those new guys added into that system, you still had him at I think number 10.
10.
So it's like that's a guy who, with all those new draft picks, a ton of talent there. That's just another guy who really upped his stock this season at the high level.
Yeah, I mean, he allowed seven extra base hits this year. No one could barrel
He,
him for
wow.
whatever reason. So I'm excited to dive more into those to his starts and just try to find some different video angles, see what it looks like because
Yeah.
he's clearly got something going for him.
Definitely. All right, man. Well, we'll do more of this from double A, triple A level next week, and then we'll have so many other various types of prospect team of the year. We've got breakout prospects of the year. We have an article going up next week. We'll have two articles, AL and NL, for each team's prospect of the year per organization. So we've got so much written content on the prospect side and podcast content coming out as we finish the minor league season here in the next week.
Yeah, and then we've got Arizona Fall League roster previews.
Yeah.
We'll probably get to that next week as well. Reminder, would love to have you in the Discord. We're talking prospects in there all the time. Also breaking down the Bowman Chrome checklist in there for people, kind of talking about some underrated chases I like beyond what I did on the Sports Card CEO, which will be out next week. But the link to join that is in the episode description. Best way to support just baseball and the call up on there. Hope you all have a great weekend. As always, thank you for listening. Look forward to talking prospects with you next week.